Hello, everybody, and welcome back into episode number 13 of the Vultures Row podcast. I'm your host, Joey Bonsanti. Join with me today, I only have one, Pat Winters. Pat, how we doing?
Good. Pumped. Schedule's out, right? It's a really exciting time. You can really, just feels like the season's getting closer and you can really start mapping out how you think this, again, the opponents, but when you really see it in, how it's structured and especially if you travel, if you like going to an away game, that stuff, it really it's an exciting time.
Definitely. So, no Tony today. Tony Vegas is off doing more important things than our New York Jets podcast. So, obviously, at this point, you guys have all seen the schedule. We're going to kind of go through our thoughts first and then kind of go through game by game. So, I'll start with you, Pat. What are your thoughts on the schedule overall? How you feeling about it?
So I'm very happy that all the 1 p.m. I'm very happy about all the 1 p.m. games, as I'm sure like many Jet fans are. Like we're just back to where we belong. Um, Especially as the seasons get older, it's just like a lot easier. Um, Having the 1 p.m. games again on Sundays. It just the past 2 years, especially with the expectations and just not meeting them, but all the primetime games were just brutal. So I'm just really thrilled about that from a fan standpoint. I think from the Jet standpoint, I think there's like two tranches of this. I think the season success, depending on how what your expectations are for the season, it ultimately hinges on the start of the season, and really saying like before the bye week, right? So weeks 1 through 8, they have a pretty tough slate to start the season. I would say, before the bye week, they're probably going to be favored in like one game, maybe. And I'm thinking it's going to be home versus Carolina. So when I look at that, I think, can they get to the bye week at 3-5? How could they reasonably get to the bye week at 3-5? And if they can do that, then they actually might have a chance to have like in the hunt graphic in December. Um, they have to split with New England and Miami to have a meaningful season. Like they just can't go 1-5 in their division again. 2-4 at Buffalo would be, a 2-4, um, a 2-4, Jesus Christ.
Division.
Yeah, 2-4 division wins would be with losing twice to Buffalo would be like a respectable. Um, and I think that 13 through 17 is going to be really where we find out what this team's all about. There's potential for like a very tough start, like I said, but when you see those weeks, which is it's home against Atlanta and Miami back to back, then it's at Jacksonville, at New Orleans, and then home against New England. Those are all winnable games. And coming out of those games, 3-2, 4-1 would create a lot of positive momentum to end the season. And they could either climb out of a dark spot early in the season or, it could be a chance for them to sneak around the wild card hunt, maybe. Um, and I also think that the road schedule is like pretty fairly balanced. They don't travel across the country like to the West Coast. I mean, London obviously is the big trip, but outside of that, they don't really have like a really tough traveling schedule. They don't have three consecutive away or home games. I'm not really a big fan of the early Florida games back to back due to the heat. Like I would have preferred that to be later in the season, but beggars can't be choosers. But overall, from a travel perspective, there isn't anything that like pops out to me as too grueling. So that's kind of like my overall initial thoughts. I think the over at 5.5 wins is a good bet right now. So I'll get into our game by game predictions, but that's kind of my initial thoughts.
Sure, I agree with a lot of what you said, so I won't harp on it too much. I, like you, am very happy for 1 o'clocks. We wish for primetime games for the past probably 7, 8 years. We got them. We didn't like them, especially because we were not playing well. So I do love that. I really, in terms of the division, like I see us going 2-4, but the New England matchup really, those are important. And the reason I say that is because I could see us splitting, I could see us losing both, or I could see us winning both. Like there's so many possibilities with that. I think there's a lot that holds weight. You got AG turned down the interview in New England. You got Vrabel, who was potentially going to be the New York Jets coach. You talk back early into the head coaching search. He was probably the number one option. And then I look at the first 5 games of the season. In my opinion, that's huge because I could see a world where they maybe start 1-4. I see a world where they could potentially start 3-2 if they're really hot. How do they respond to that? If they start 1-4, do they crumble? If they start hot, do they continue that? That is going to be on the coaching, in my opinion, a huge part to this season. I also think talking about coaching, you look at some of these games like the Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans, Carolina, like are those games that we could handle business? Like obviously some of those teams, like in my opinion, Atlanta is one of those sleeper teams. Could we play a good game? Could we beat Atlanta? Can we take care of business against Jacksonville, New Orleans, and Carolina? That's going to tell me a lot about Aaron Glenn. So,
That's the
I
hard part about this schedule, though, too, because these games on paper that we look at that like we feel confident about aren't necessarily these like take care of business layup teams like Carolina. Like, yeah, we'll probably be favored because we're home, but Bryce Young looked really good at the end of the season. They made some improvements, right? Atlanta's another good point. Like, what do they look like this year? Um, Cleveland, I mean, they've always been a pretty gritty team. Like, they're not just like even Jacksonville too, right? Like, I know at the end of the year, it's always us and them fight. We lose the game, we win the game, but we really feel like we lost because it's a draft thing. But you know, like Trevor Lawrence is there too, and they've made improvements as well. Like they have this new coaching staff with Liam Cohen and all this stuff. So, it's gonna be really interesting to see how this shakes out. And also, I just think again, it's when we look at the schedule initially, we're always like basing it on last year, and like every team in the NFL is so different year to year. Teams miss the playoffs that made it the year prior, and vice versa. And the parity in the league is so thin. So, you know, it's going to be very interesting.
I agree. We should jump into the week by week breakdown here. Let's start
Do
with
it.
week one. I'll throw to you first. We got week one at home against the Steelers, 1 o'clock game, back where we belong. What do you think is going down here? What are some of the top storylines you
I
feel?
think it's a great what better way to open the season, right? Let's assume Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, right? That is going to be a ton of storylines in that regard. So assuming they have Aaron as their QB, Justin Fields revenge game, Aaron Glenn coaching debut, Aaron Rodgers potential return to MetLife. I think this potentially works in their favor that they would catch one of their, let's call it better opponents early in the season as opposed to later when they're in a groove. Again, this is the only team in the NFL that's going to have a new starting quarterback, running back, and wide receiver one prior to turnover from last season, right? So there's going to be a lot to be worked out there chemistry wise. I think the home opener is going to have a lot of energy, and I take into account, what I like to do when I do my schedule prediction. I really try to take into account that they're going to win a game that they shouldn't win, and they're going to lose a game they shouldn't lose, right? Because that's what the Jets do. So I'm going to chalk this one up as one of the ones that they probably shouldn't win, but they will. So I think that they're going to win a close game. I'm going to say 17-13, something like that, and start the season 1-0. Home opener win.
I like that. Before I get into my point, I want to touch on a point that you mentioned before because it lost my in my brain. So when you talk about predicting the schedule for this year, you say, well, we always based off last year. And I think it's tough to do because we have no idea what the identity of this team is. At least we knew with the last solid Jets that we were getting probably a good defense, top five, we would say. So we would kind of know what to do. Here is completely different, so it is a little bit of a wild card. We don't know. With
Yeah,
that being,
because we don't know if they're a better team or not.
we
Like,
don't.
and that's like a whole episode we have to do is like, is this team actually better than they were last year? Because like talent wise and on paper, it doesn't seem like it, but because they're just definitely gonna be coached better because it couldn't be worse. You just don't really like. I like to think that they're gonna be a better team than they were last year. So, I'm
Yeah.
trying to be optimistic as I can.
Exactly. So I just wanted to touch on that before I got into it
Sure.
because I wanted to make that point. So with this game, I think regardless of a Rodgers marriage in Pittsburgh, it's going to be interesting because Fields against his old team at home. I think the energy is going to be super high. New regime, new era, really. I think the Jets do win this game 23-16. I could totally see them taking this game at home. If it was in Pittsburgh, different story. I'll start week two here. Week two, at home versus Buffalo. I think that these teams have been playing well against each other the past few years, probably since like 2021.
Yeah.
I really do think the Bills are going to sweep us, spoiler, and I think they handle business. I think they're really going to be the real deal this year. They win 31-13 in our house.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, look, we have to be realistic, right? I mean, look, lately they played Buffalo pretty good at home, right? They lost by 3 last year, missed like all the turmoil. That was when the whole thing when Sal got fired and the whole thing got blown up. And obviously beat them the year prior at home after the Rodgers killing. So I think they'll play them tough. But I do ultimately think they'll lose this game. I'm going to say like 28-10, and I agree with you. I think Buffalo's going to be a powerhouse this year. So
With that being said, we're both in agreement
one
here.
for one.
1-1. I'll throw it back to you here. Week 3 at Tampa Bay. What are you feeling for this game?
Tough one. I think it's another game where they won't be favored, but it is winnable. And this is a game I could see myself talking, into myself and taking the Jets with the points whenever the line comes out. I could see this being like a 5.5 point kind of game or something like that. However, this is one of those games I worry about the secondary a little bit. Even if, I think Godwin will be back from his injury at the time. So if that's the case, they're going to have Evans, Godwin, and Emeka from Ohio State, right? That arguably could be the best wide receiver true in the league. And I see this as one of those games where I just don't know if the Jets will be able to keep up offensively with Tampa. Like Tampa will get their points, and I just don't know if the way stylistically that they're that they're like suited to be right now, like if they're going to be able to just go, you'll see in my scores, like I don't see them throwing up like 35-point games and things like that. So when they're going to face an offensive juggernaut like this one, I just don't know if they're going to be able to, like Tampa's going to get their points, and I don't know if they'll be able to keep up. So I said 28-17
Like that.
loss, obviously.
Yep. Yes, I figured that. Again, really like the matchup. Really think it's going to be a fun game. Like you said, high octane offense. And with the way the defensive line's constructed right now, and they could surprise me, but I don't see it being a game where we are able to get to Baker Mayfield and contain all those receivers. I take a loss here for the Jets. 28-20, I have it with the Jets scoring a touchdown in the last 3 minutes. So it's probably going to be worse than it looks. I'll start here. We go back-to-back Florida. Like you said, we got our first prime time of the year, Monday night in Miami. I think it'll be close. I think we're splitting with Miami. Spoiler again. I think the Fins win this one 21-17, putting my record prediction at 1-3 so far.
Yep, same thing. Spoiler alert here. I also do think they'll split with the Dolphins. They historically lose to the Dolphins in Miami, and when they beat them, it's usually home. So I'm going to go with the trend here and say that they'll lose 20-17.
And I'll throw to you, Week 5 at home. This is an interesting one. Dallas, what do you think?
I don't know. When I was looking at this game, I got like the Darnold coming back from mono, throwing the bomb to Robbie Anderson. That was the last time they played Dallas at home vibe. So I don't like Dallas doesn't scare me as much as like they are on paper. I could see this one being a toss up. And I think this is one of the rare games that I feel going into it that the Jets have a better coaching staff and can outcoach, the other team. And I also just, trying to believe in coaching, I just don't see them, with better coaching falling into a 4-game losing streak. So I'm going to say that they win this game 24-21, home game. Again, if it was in Dallas, different story. But, whether it's they beat Miami or they beat Dallas, like I see them being 2-3 after 5 games. So, in an ideal world.
I will go on the opposition here. I have Dallas winning this game. I think they have improved enough to where they can get back to that really good regular season team that they are. I have them beating the Jets 24-23 here. I think it comes down to something like the Jets trying to go for 2 to win the game. I have them sitting at 1-4 at this point.
Okay, so 1-4 and 2-3.
So pretty similar. So now we head to London. This is going to be a fun one against Denver. It's technically a home game. I just don't think the Jets in London mix very well. I haven't seen a lot of success there with the Jets. I have the Broncos winning this game 23-17 and us dropping to 1-5, which is kind of what I alluded to earlier. What do they do here if they're 1-5? Do they crumble or do they start to take back some of these wins? I don't know. If that's the case, that's really going to show the resilience of this coaching staff. But I'll throw it to you on this Denver game.
Yeah, I think I have them losing this game too. I think this is a game where they just don't match up well offensively. Again, Denver has a really great defense that's only gotten better this season, right? They added Jahdae Barron to that secondary, and you would expect Bo Nix to take a marginal leap. Again, 2 good defenses. This could lead to a low-scoring game where the Jets' run game could just keep this game close, but I think the Jets will lose this one like 17-7, 17-10, something like that. And then they're right back into it in Carolina or home against Carolina. I just find it interesting that they did this again where they don't take the bye week after London. It just doesn't make sense to me. I just feel like they should.
Must be too early, right?
Too early in the season, yeah. I guess. But, at least, again, we're rolling right into it, but at least they get a good opponent at least on paper, after, London. So I had them at 2-4 going into the Carolina game. Um, I think, again, like I said, you couldn't ask for a better opponent post London. I think they'll rebound. Good home win, young quarterback, but and Carolina has improved, but again, the fact that it's home, I think they'll win that one like 23-17. They'll be 3-4.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think post London, comparatively to the rest of the schedule, it's an easy opponent. I would say unless Bryce Young turns into Joe Montana through the first 6 weeks, I don't foresee this being an issue. I think the Jets bounce back here in a big way. They win 36-20. They jump to 2-5. I would hope that's really the case. They have to win a game like that, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. If they're gonna have a meaningful season, this is just one of those you gotta win games. It's home against on paper, you're gonna be favored to win this game.
Absolutely. We have no idea. Again, Bryce Young could be, the next Joe Montana, but we don't know that because
Yeah.
right now we've seen two versions of him. Then the next week we travel to Cincinnati. I'll leave it at this. It's a tough road game. It's against a really tough offense. I don't like the odds here. I have the Bengals taking this one 33-14 in an ugly, ugly loss for the Jets. They drop back down to earth at 2-6.
Yeah, I see the Bengals being a really serious Super Bowl contender this year. I see, and I've been saying it every year until he does it, but I just think Joe Burrow is going to win MVP, and this could be one of those games. Like, I think this in Baltimore is going to be like the really bad games where they just get absolutely torched. And again, it's not that the defense won't try and do their job. It's just that I don't know if, like in the games where they face these offensive juggernauts, if they're going to be able to put up enough points offensively to hang with these guys because like Joe Burrow's not going to come out and score like 7 points and win a 10-7 game. Like, their problem last year was defense, right? And so for me, I don't see it being like, all right, the Jets are going to score all over the place, right? So I see this being like a 35-17, but again, scoring like, it's really 35-10 kind of, but they score the garbage time touchdown. So they're at 3-5, which again, for me, if they're 3-9, if they're 3-5 at the bye week, that's probably best case scenario right now. Like that's my initial thoughts.
I would take it. I really would.
Yeah, I would take 3-5 at the bye, and like if we were 3-5 at the bye week, I would feel really good about the coaching staff. I'd feel really good about where they're heading in the second half of the season with where the schedule shakes out.
Yep, I would have them at 2-6. Again, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be pretty disappointed. I really would hope that they could squeeze to 3 wins there. But it is a tough stretch there, especially with going to London. Yeah, like you had mentioned, the back-to-back Florida games in the September heat. So I don't like that.
The odds are they're going to be 1-6 though, or 1-7.
It could
Like
really.
if we're just going to take straight like lines and favors, like
Sure.
most likely they would, it's going to be like they're only going to be favored against Carolina probably.
Yeah, most likely, I'd
So,
say when you look at all of these, you're probably right.
which is
Um,
just, so that's why I'm like, all right, 3-5 is probably best case scenario. You're asking to beat two lines, like be two games where you overcome the odds.
yeah, I agree. Week 10, we come back on the bye, face Cleveland, who I think, again, you come off the London game with Carolina, you come off the bye with Cleveland. These are very winnable games. Who knows who the Browns quarterback's going to be? It could be Shador, it could be Gabriel, could be God knows who. I think regardless, it's a winnable game, and I think the Jets take it 20-10, improve to 3-6 on the season.
Yeah, again, I think they're on paper they're better than the Browns. I would suspect we would see one of the now that it's week 10 at this point, I would suspect that we would see one of the rookies starting, which I would just think bodes well for the Jets defense. So, and it's home. So give me, Jets 17-13 and I got them at 4-5, which again, I'd be feeling pretty good.
I agree. Week 11 at New England. What are you thinking on this front?
Yeah, I'm so torn on these New England games. I keep going back and forth if they're going to split with them or, like how much of an improvement has New England really made, right? Um, I think they're going to lose a close one in New England. I think Drake May will take a step. I don't think they've improved enough in the passing game for him. So I do think that they're going to be both like pick 'em toss up games for me. And it ultimately could be like what determines them from having, like 5 to 7 to 8 wins. But I have them losing the first game in New England on the Thursday night, and they'll be 4-6.
Yeah, to go a little bit more on this New England game, I think there's a lot more to unpack with this, and we could do it later. But like I said before, AG turned this interview down. I think that he's going to really want to ignite this rivalry, especially playing for the Jets as well. I'm with you here. They lose a really close game. I think they drop it 24-23, and they also dropped to 3-7 on the season. So I'm really
Yeah,
interested to
look,
see
I
how the
think
team
you
plays
hit the
against
nail
them.
on the head. Like, for AG, man, like you want to set the tone with like changing things around here. You got to go out and get ahead of yourself against New England,
Yeah.
right? Um, but again, Vrabel, another great coach, a proven coach, right? So, and he also will take stock into this rivalry just as much as Aaron Glenn does. So, again, I think these are going to be the determining games for them, and depending on what your expectations are. But yeah, I mean, they can't seem to reasonably split, or they split with New England last year, but years prior when we thought we were getting close, we just never have. So I can't sit here and say they're going to go 2-0 against New England, or even comfortably say they're going to split with them.
I said they would split for the past like 20 years, and they
Yeah,
didn't get a game against them for the longest time. So I'm not going
yeah,
to go down that road. This is a boring week, week 12 at Baltimore. I think it's going to get ugly. I think the Ravens won like 37-6, honestly, and we dropped to 3-8.
yeah. I think unfortunately it's one of those games where they just face an opponent on the road who's just in a different class than them at this point, and I think it'll be one of their worst losses of the season. I had it like a 42-10. Just they're going to get walloped.
Yeah, could be one of those like reset games.
Yeah, kind of thing. I don't think we need to talk about it too much, but yeah, I'd have them at 4-7. You'd have them at 3-8 at this point.
Correct. That is
Okay,
correct. So then we
got it.
come back home, week 13 against Atlanta. I have the Falcons winning their division this year. I think it's going to be a really close game. It's a really true coin flip for me. I think the Falcons do take it though at our house, 19-16, and we drop
Oof.
to 3-9.
This is where I get a little. This is where I said this is where the season really comes down, right? Especially if you're 4-7, right? So I think this is like gut check time for them, and I think this will be a game where they might be favored to win, like depending on where the season's at. Um, but I think they'll win this game. I'm going to say 20-13, and they'll be 5-7.
True coin flip though.
Yeah, definitely.
I really do think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, Michael Penix was my favorite quarterback in that draft, so I am a big Penix fan. So
Then
I think he's
we
going to have a great year, and I think the weapons that he has is underrated, and I think he's going to have a really good year. But I still think at the same time we win that game for some reason.
I could see it. Week 14 against Miami at home. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, we got to get a division win. I don't have one yet, so get their split with the Finns here, and win a close one, and then I am at 6-7 now.
Wow. Yeah, that would, if 6-7, I would love that scenario.
Yeah,
That's something that I could deal with. I think the Jets are going to struggle in almost every single division game. By struggle, I mean it's going to be a close game. I think they win here 22-16. They improve to 4-9, and they take their first division win down. And then we're going back to Florida. This time we're going to Jacksonville, week 15. I'd say every time I see Jacksonville on the schedule, it like genuinely makes me want to barf. I can't stand playing this team. Like you said, it's typically at the end of the season when both teams are not in a good spot, and we're kind of, or some fans are hoping for a loss.
yeah, they always need this game for the draft pick. This is always the draft pick game.
Yep.
We always win when we don't want to win.
With that being said, I think I'm going to surprise some people here. I think this is going to be a 17-10 game. Jacksonville wins. We lose. We drop to 4-10 on.
Jeez, dude.
Sorry, man. This is you got to be
pessimistic.
you got to be real here. I don't have us
No, I
finishing with
get
like
it.
3
I
wins.
get why. I don't blame you for feeling
You-
this way. It's just
we-
like, fuck.
I want you to think of some of the times that the Jets have traveled down to Jacksonville, some of the results, and just when you're watching that game in that stadium, it just feels like they can't get anything going. And that's just a gut feeling. And hopefully the coaching changes that and the running game changes that. But man, I've just
Last year they did, but again, it was just
Sure.
one of those. It was just Rodgers playing.
they also
here-
were playing Mac Jones, so
Yeah, that's
know.
true. That's a good point. Um, I had them losing. I think this is a game where, like again, a lot of us think they're going to win, and this is one of those games where it might just take the wind out of the sails for the season instead of, because again, if they won in my scenario, they'd be 7-7, right? And like we'd be shocking the league, and I just can't get that optimistic about this team. So I have them at 6-8 at this point. However, which way they get there, but in this scenario, it would be they lose to Jacksonville, who I think will be an improved team simply just from the coaching. And I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a really big bounce back here. So I would say Jets lose 24-13. They'll be 6-8.
6-8 for you, 4-10 for me. We got Week 16 at New Orleans. I'm not scared of the Saints. I don't think that I'm scared of Tyler Shuck at all. No offense to you. I know you're a big Tyler Shuck guy.
I'm happy he's getting his shot. This is going to be great.
He's definitely getting a shot. You're going to
yeah,
be able
he's
to watch
going
a lot
in
of
the
them.
starter, man. It's going to be awesome.
I'll keep it short, simple. It's going to be a tough game. I think Jets take it, though, 27-17. They improve to 5-10.
Yeah, I don't think New Orleans is going to be that great this year. Again, rookie quarterback. I think they match up well against the Saints. I think they'll win this game, and again, they'd be 7-8, and which would set up to probably be the biggest matchup they would have with the Patriots since 2015.
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Do you want to take it first? I'll let you take it first. I think I just went twice in a row.
So again, if this is the case, I would suspect both of them would be fighting for a playoff spot, probably, or a potential wild card spot. Right? The Jets are 7-8. You would have to think New England's in the 8, right around the same cat. Maybe they're 8-7, right? 9, something like that, right? So again, it's a total toss-up, but my pessimistic Jet fan in me tells me that New England will beat them, and in a heartbreaking 17-14, game-winning field goal thing that kicks us out of the playoff contention, and just puts a real sour taste in our fucking mouths.
I think I could totally see that, and maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic here. I just don't think there's any way in hell Aaron Glenn loses both games to the New England Patriots. I think that he brings a different type of fire to the locker room, one that's relatable to the players. Like when I think of Robert Saleh going up against the New England Patriots, I'm like, I don't have any confidence at all. This, I feel like there's a fire. I think they win this game on a field goal, 20-17. That brings them to 6-10 on my schedule. Then we finish it up, Week 18 versus Buffalo. I think Buffalo's most likely going to need this game when it comes down to it. I think Buffalo takes it 33-16, and we finish the season at 6-11.
Yeah, so I went back and forth with this one because, again, Week 18, you just don't really know. I would like to think that there's either two scenarios. They're either fighting for the 1 seed, and they're just going to step on the Jets' throats, or they're not. They lock their playoff spot up, and they can't get the 1 seed, in which they probably rest their starters, and then the Jets would win. But I think Buffalo's going to be fighting for that 1 seed. So I have them, again, winning pretty handily. I said 38-17. I have the Jets finishing at 7-10 in a pretty shitty fashion. Because if I told you 7-10 right now, you'd probably be like, all right, I take that. But like the way I presented it, you'd probably be like, fuck that. So, like I said, it comes down to that 5-game stretch where there's no real juggernaut opponent. Can they go 3-2 in those games? Can they, what did I have technically them going there? I had them going, let's see. I had them going 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3. Yeah. So, can they go 4-2 in those games? Right? Something like that. Is that possible? And there's a real chance where if they just hold the fort in the beginning of the season for the most part, and they can be like 7-8, 8, there's a real world where they could be 7 wins and in the hunt in some capacity. And it could come down to that New England, New Orleans, Jacksonville stretch, which are all winnable games. So I don't think it's like a punt the season. It should be an exciting season with the way the schedule is shaken out. I just really hope they don't go 1-5 and totally just takes the wind out of the sails for the season going into the stretch of November and stuff.
So my exact scenario. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and I just think I don't think Aaron Glenn's going to let that happen. I'm really confident in the coaching that they're going to get this thing turned around in that regard. So, I have it at 7-10, but it could be at 8-9.
Sure, it could be anything.
I think best case scenario they're 8-9.
And I'll say this: I hope that I come back to this video or this podcast months down the road, months and months down the road, and say, "Ha, you bunch of idiots!" Like that's the best case scenario. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I can't sit here and give them the benefit of the doubt in all of these games that are coin flips because they haven't made the damn playoffs in 15 fucking years.
Yeah, they got to
So
prove it.
like
Period.
I don't care about like when I go on Twitter and I see 10-7 and all this bull crap. No, they don't deserve that. And I understand it's a new regime and it's a new coaching staff and all this bullshit. They don't get the benefit of the doubt. 6 wins, 7 wins, sure. Listen, you should not be going on and predicting 11 wins and 12 wins. You're just going to set yourself up for failure. And listen, I really like this coach. I think he's probably one of my favorite hires in years, but we need to see the product on the field before I give them any benefit of the doubt. I think 6, 5, 7 is fair. Anything above that, I think you're off your rocker.
Yeah, look, you have every right to feel that way. And look, at the end of the day, right? Like, what did they really do this offseason? They got Armand Membu and Mason Taylor, and that's what, we're going to win a lot more because of that. Like, that's unreasonable to think, right? I just go back to the fact that, and I do think we need to do like a whole podcast on it because it's like, I think Jet fans are struggling right now with the fact of like, are they better than they were last year or not? Because on paper, they're not. Like, but the coaching has got to be better. And the players last year were just so not bought in, and who knows what really happened with Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that. So it's so hard to say if they're going to be a better, are they a better team than they were than last year? And I really just like to think that coaching at the end of the day has a huge factor in this, and Aaron Glenn is going to be the leader that they really need and that, staple in the building that they need. That's why, again, like I don't have them losing like 4 in a row. I just don't. I don't see them laying over and dying. But again, you got to preach patience, right? Dan Campbell's first year with the Lions, they were terrible. I'm pretty sure they were.
They had like 3 or 4 wins, I think.
Yeah,
It
like
was
I don't
bad.
even remember what it was, but it was really bad. I mean, he was like crying at the podium, I think, like at one point,
Yeah.
and like I think he got his first win like week 10 or something. It's something
Yeah.
like pretty bad like that. So again, preach patience with this stuff. If they come out of this year over, in that 6 to 8 win mark, that's a fine building block for now. I know it's not what everyone wants to hear because we are going on year 14, but Aaron Glenn's going on year 1, right? And so is Zaramuji, and they have to build it the right way. And that being said, though, I feel comfortable with the over of 5.5 wins.
Yeah, me too.
I just see them hitting it. Vegas says they're going to be a 6-win team because they have it at minus 155 right now at over 5.5. So that's telling you they think they're going to be a 6-win team. So however they get to that 6 wins, again, being the Jets fan I am, I'm a little more confident. I think that, I could handle a 7-win season. I think I'd be pretty satisfied with that given what's going on. But we'll see. That's the beauty of this whole schedule thing, right? And again, this is going to change. We're going to have another episode probably as we get closer with like the final, preseason predictions and stuff. And I'm sure I'll look at this schedule again tomorrow and be like, I don't know, maybe they'll lose the Dallas, but they'll beat this team, right? Like I think at the end of the day, like your record, you feel confident about the record. You just how you get to it is always changes.
And I'll wrap it with this. It's if they are 10-7, if they do win 11 games, then damn, we have a freaking quarterback. We have a quarterback because if
Yeah.
that's the case, we have a coach, we have a quarterback. So I think you can look at it like that for all the people that will say, well, you're crazy for saying 6 wins. Well, if they do win 10, then there's a real conversation about
Yeah,
paying
look,
Justin
Justin Fields was 4-2 as a starter last year, right, or something like that.
He's 4-0. He didn't lose.
Yeah,
He started the season 4-0.
yeah. Oh,
He just
right.
got
Yeah,
he got
he
cold.
was. Yeah, exactly. He was a great. And he didn't turn the ball over and stuff. So I mean, look, the recipe's there. I just my thing when I was looking through the schedule was I just don't know those teams that have the offensive firepower. I don't think the defense is like what it was years ago where they could just shut these teams down and win 17-13 against the really good teams. Like they're not going to shut Josh Allen down again. They're not going to shut,
The
Baker
Eagles, the
down.
Chiefs, yeah, all these
Yeah,
teams.
it's just that I don't think the defense is like that, at least right now, and the offense just doesn't have the passing weapons, in my opinion, to go toe to toe with a team. So the running will be great, and that's how they're going to have to win games. They're going to have to play good defense, run the ball, control the clock, and really keep like low scoring games. But Like I don't even know. I'm looking now. I'm like, how many? I'm trying to think how many. Like, what's the most that I have them scoring in a win?
I
I think I
think
had
it,
like 24. I
yeah,
had 24, 23. Like, yeah, I don't think they're gonna be this offensive juggernaut. I don't have them scoring over 24 points. Every time
that's
they have a win, I think it's 20 to 17, 20 to 13,
with a run heavy
17
team. That's
13.
understandable.
Yeah,
A run heavy
so
team with a defense who's probably not going to generate like a ton of
yeah,
turnovers. So I
yeah,
think that's pretty
exactly.
reasonable. Before we hop, first of all, Tony was on this episode. This episode might have been 2 hours, so that's first thing. So give you guys some time back. Go follow at NYJ_Vultures Row on Twitter. Go follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Patreon, all the good stuff. Any final thoughts here before I sign off, Pat?
No, I mean, interesting time going in now, right? We have a little bit of a dead period, but we'll do some fun stuff. I think this is a fun time of the year, and believe it or not, and look, one more day close to the season. I love the schedule release. It really gets the juices flowing. So
Absolutely. Well, a good episode for you guys next week with a guest. Could be dropping two. We'll see how the news goes. But thanks for listening, and make sure to drop your schedule predictions down below on the tweet where we post. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you, and go Jets.